So as I've been on this journey, I start to notice things about myself and areas and opportunities to kind of improve and get better. And one of those that has come up is how I handle the stress of running late or needing to be somewhere at a set time. What I started to realize was that stress, it triggered me in some way, almost to the point where I start to feel a bit overwhelmed if I thought we were running late, and I was worried about the implications of that. And in that moment where I thought we might be late, the stress level gets high, anger, yelling, you lose the temper, get flustered, just overall in a place where I wouldn't naturally want to be. So as I started to identify that, I started to think about, well, that's not something, you probably go through the first phase where you justify it. And well, my kid's not listening to me, or my wife or whoever's moving too slow, or whatever it is. I'm so sick of being late. We're late all the time, and I have a grudge about that. Whatever it is, you make that excuse. But then ideally, as I think I did, you get to a point where you say, well, that's not helping. Let's try and actually solve this thing. Let's actually try and do something to improve it. So you could try and talk to your family and speed things up or what have you. But I found, and I've tried that, but I found the approach that I went with was to try and just always move the time up, right? So if we had to be somewhere, I would always just say 15 minutes earlier was the time we had to leave. So if we really had to leave at 11:30, so I'll tell my wife and my son we have to leave at 11:15. This way, if we're inevitably going to be running late, or there's a chance for that stress, there's a built-in buffer. There's kind of a 15-minute buffer period that we have. So in theory, that should resolve things. And, something like that, it does work a bit. I have had some success with it, but what I've started to realize is that I'm reverting back. That 15-minute buffer, now I just get to that same stress point 15 minutes earlier than I would have otherwise. Perhaps it's watered down a little bit because I know we're not truly late yet, but there's still this stress of we're not on the schedule or on the time that we're supposed to be. And that's the point. Why do I tell this story? Well, I think it's an interesting example of when you have an issue, when you have a behavior that you're trying to change and you're struggling to change it, right? You're in this habit or this groove where it's almost instinctual, and it's just very hard to break, as in this situation. You look for things, right? And often we look for the quickest things, which isn't bad, right? Let's be efficient. If there's quick, easy, low-hanging fruit ways to improve this, we should go after that. And one of the things I did here was exactly that. I said, well, I'll just adjust the time. I'll put this little trick in. It'll resolve this issue, which I assume it must be that I just don't want to be late. And that should make sure that we're not late. And I'm assuming that that's the root issue. That's what's causing the actual stress and the discomfort and getting the reaction out of me. I haven't done the work, though. I didn't actually prove that out. I didn't check the math. I didn't go through all the things we talk about and the frameworks to try and get it to a better understanding. I just kind of plugged that in and said that should work. But then it doesn't. Then I'm still flipping out or getting overwhelmed in the moment, and you can get frustrated. But to me, it illustrates the point. You have to get to the root. You have to get into the mud and get down to it, face those inconvenient truths. You have to be honest with yourself and understand what's actually going on. You need the clarity to see, so that the solution you put forth is actually precise towards that. And it's much more effective, much more likely to get to the outcome you want. And in this case, as I kind of think through it, I start to recognize that it's about expectations, as it often is for me. I have expectations of how things are supposed to play out in my head, even when it's coming to us getting ready to go somewhere and to leave. It should be smooth. Everybody should be ready at the time I think they should be ready, right? There should be no stress around it. It should be easy. Everybody should be in accordance with my plan. And we have to stick to the plan, whatever that plan is. If there's a time in which we're saying we're going to leave, we got to do it at that time. We got to make sure everything kind of sticks to it. And we could get into a whole thing as to why I feel I need that much control and all that, but let's just leave that to the side for now and just say, you start to identify that's the root of the stress. That's the root of the trigger that gets me going, is the plan and the expectations. And once you see that, then it's as clear as math that, well, the solution you put forth isn't going to fix that. You're just putting a different plan in place. If anything, you're making it harder because you're moving it up. You're increasing the likelihood of a problem. So well-intentioned and not a bad idea in theory could be useful in certain ways in combination. At the end of the day, I always feel like you have to do the work. If you really want to give yourself the best chance to get to the objective you want, you have to do that hard work, figure out the inconvenient truths, face them, and then solve for that.